The world's richest man, Elon Musk, made a huge mistake that led to him breaking his arm. He went to the hospital alone, but he was not welcomed there. No one wanted to help him. His wound was getting worse, and there was even a risk of infection. He was in a very difficult situation. At that moment, a kind-hearted nurse named Emma saved Elon Musk's life. However, the hospital owner did not approve of this and fired Emma. When Elon Musk learned what had happened, he knew exactly what to do. Shocking events unfolded, and Emma was especially stunned when she realized what was happening. Now, let's begin our story. Elon Musk, as always, was working early in the morning in his office. Buried in files, reports, and books related to his company's new projects, he was spending time at his desk. His obsession with outlandish projects kept him from stopping. That day, too, he was reviewing the necessary materials for a new test to be conducted at Tesla's famous factory. But at that moment, none of the things he was thinking about would matter for a brief moment. On the lower floors of the building where his office was located, there was a library section with books neatly arranged on shelves as always. Wanting to review the details of the last article he had read, Elon got up to grab a book from the shelves. But at that moment, something unusual happened. As Elon rearranged the books, he lost his balance. At first, he didn't realize it, but suddenly his hands were left empty. When he leaned on one of the shelves for support, it suddenly loosened, and all the books came crashing down on him. Not just books, but also the structural support elements of the shelf collapsed with a loud crash, falling directly onto Elon. He hit the ground without even protecting his head. The only thing he could feel at that moment was intense pain. His arm twisted in agony. The impact was so severe that he immediately realized he had broken his arm. The employees nearby heard the noise and quickly rushed to his aid. Tesla's most valuable figure was on the ground, groaning in pain. Several people instantly pulled out their phones to call emergency services. However, as the pain surged through his body, Elon carefully observed the frantic people around him. There was no doubt that everyone was ready to help him, but another reality stood out. Elon Musk had always been the one in charge. Getting help was the easiest thing in the world for him. Yet, at that moment, a strange sense of pride welled up inside him. He saw himself as someone strong enough to handle things on his own. The mind behind massive companies like Tesla and SpaceX wasn't going to wait for an ambulance in an ordinary manner. "I can do this myself," he muttered, struggling to sit up despite the pain. Some employees hesitated, choosing to watch rather than call emergency services. They exchanged knowing glances instead of taking any action to assist him. This only frustrated Elon further. He felt an overwhelming sense of emotional isolation in addition to his physical pain. Finally, forcing his injured arm, he attempted to stand up. He quickly stepped out of his office. A few people looked at him, but no one did anything. Their eyes held a kind of indifference. Elon, despite the pain, decided to go to the hospital on his own. In a situation where everyone should have been there for him, he was the only one ignoring the necessity of receiving help. But at that moment, all he could think about was his pride and determination. The car was Tesla's newest model. As he got inside, the pain in his arm became even more unbearable. For a brief moment, he thought, "Should I call a doctor?" But at that moment, all that mattered to him was getting to the hospital as fast as possible. He slowly pressed the accelerator. As he sped through the streets, the thought crossed his mind. Maybe rushing like this would have consequences, but the indifferent stares of those who hadn't helped him would always remain in his mind. His arm throbbed with pain every passing second. Wanting to waste no time reaching the hospital, he forced himself and pulled into the hospital parking lot. After parking, he quickly stepped out and made his way toward the entrance. But as he approached the hospital doors, he noticed the same indifference on the faces inside. In reality, there was a misunderstanding. The doctors and nurses at the hospital, just like his employees, only saw him as a businessman. Being Tesla's CEO wasn't enough to command respect here. But then, at that moment, a nurse noticed him. Emma, walking briskly through the hospital corridor, caught sight of Elon. While the others ignored him and turned their backs, Emma quickly approached, deciding to help. "Do you need assistance?" she asked. Elon was surprised by Emma's concern. But there was only one thing he needed at that moment: help. "Yes, please," he replied in pain. Emma immediately began assisting him, taking the necessary steps for first aid. In that moment, through her dedication and kindness, Emma did Elon a great favor. But this favor would come at a cost. Elon Musk's pain was steadily increasing. His arm was hurting intensely after the fall. Even driving had become a huge struggle, but Musk continued on the road, driven by the thought that he could do something on his own. A person who ran Tesla and SpaceX thought he could overcome anything. Therefore, the idea of going to any emergency service or calling an ambulance seemed completely unnecessary to him. As he drove, he became lost in his thoughts. His passion for creating technological revolutions had always pushed him forward, but at that moment, for the first time in years, he truly felt powerless. He had always managed to stay strong and confident in many things. However, the unbearable pain in his arm was reminding him of his vulnerability. The famous CEO was rushing toward the hospital, unwilling to let the unfortunate event put his entire world's projects on hold. After all, he was strong enough to help himself, and the people around him didn't need to help him. Besides, no one would offer help for such a minor accident. When he stepped inside the glass door of the private hospital, he felt a sense of relief. This place was always one he could rely on. However, the moment he entered the hospital, he was met with a different atmosphere. The receptionist in front of him noticed him but continued to deal with things with an indifferent expression. As Elon took a step toward her, he saw no interest or respect in the woman's eyes. He quickly raised his hand and shakily raised his voice. "Is there anyone who can help me?" The woman lowered her head and said, "You might need to wait a bit." Elon waited for a short while, but his pain grew with every second. Just a few minutes later, a few nurses entered the waiting area, but none of them approached him. Nearly all of them were whispering to each other while continuing to focus on their important tasks. Elon thought, "Why are they ignoring me?" After all, he was an important person, the CEO of Tesla, a mind that was changing the world. He felt that everyone here should show him respect. After waiting for a while, a nurse caught his attention. Emma, a woman in her mid-30s, was walking calmly down the corridor. She immediately noticed Elon. She must have seen the pain he was in. However, the other nurses, even though they had tasks, ignored Elon's condition. Most of the staff were only focused on their assigned tasks. One was visiting an important patient while the others hurried to finish their work as quickly as possible. Emma looked at him with a kind of sympathy in her eyes, lowered her head, and quickly walked toward him. "Is there something I can help you with?" Emma asked with concern. Elon turned to her, his eyes filled with a glimmer of hope. "Yes, can you help? My arm is broken." Emma sat next to Elon and, carefully examining his arm, immediately suggested giving first aid. She didn't think it was necessary to call anyone else, as she had witnessed the disrespect everyone else had shown him, and only Emma seemed to want to help him. This was an unusual situation for Elon. He was so rich and powerful that he had always expected people to show him respect, but Emma, without ever expecting anything in return, was helping him. Emma gently placed her hands on Elon's arm, wrapped it with a cold bandage, and positioned it in a way that would stop the blood flow. Elon admired Emma's calm demeanor. In such a hectic environment, seeing people rush just to get their jobs done, Elon noticed the care Emma put into the details. At that moment, he slowly bowed his head and thanked Emma with gratitude. "You're really kind, but the hospital is so crowded, everyone should be helping you," Elon said, a bit angrily. Emma smiled and replied, "Sometimes things are like this, but there are always those who want to help." As she spoke, Emma's hands never stopped working. Elon hadn't expected to receive help so quickly and effectively, but Emma had shown no hesitation in dedicating herself to him. Elon felt a little more at ease in that moment. The pain in his arm had lessened thanks to Emma's professional intervention. However, the other hospital staff who hadn't helped him left a deep scar on Elon's mind. As the CEO of his companies, a person who always changed the world, he felt worthless, even having to wait in line at a hospital. He felt belittled and ignored. While everyone was looking for an opportunity to use his wealth and power, no one had extended a human hand to help him. Emma, in that moment, stood out as a very special person, and Elon, as a businessman, had once again realized that people's genuine emotional actions were a power far beyond the mechanisms of the world. After a while, Emma finished the first aid and wrapping of his arm and turned to Elon saying, "It looks like there is a serious break, but you're lucky. It's not a critical situation. You just need to rest and get treated." Elon paused for a moment, then remained silent for a while. Indeed, seeing people dealing with something so simple made him have a sort of awakening. People didn't just chase after business. Genuine help had to be done to give them meaning. Emma had given that meaning without hesitation, without expecting anything in return. Elon took a deep breath and thanked her. "Thank you so much, Emma. Your help is invaluable," he said. Emma just smiled, but in some way, thanks to her calmness and professionalism, Elon felt better. In that moment, the great loneliness he had felt was replaced with gratitude. But this was only the beginning, because Elon Musk would come to see Emma's help not just as a healthcare service, but as a lesson in humanity. After Emma had wrapped Elon's arm, she gave him one last look. "You need to rest. Don't move too much," she said gently. Elon was surprised by Emma's professional and compassionate approach. He looked at her with gratitude and nodded. "Thank you, Emma. Really, thank you." Emma smiled and walked away. Elon stayed in the hospital's waiting area for a while longer, waiting for another doctor to come and take an x-ray. However, he couldn't help but notice the way everyone around him was looking at him. Nurses and doctors seemed to be eyeing him from a distance, as if he were an enemy who had entered the hospital. They whispered among themselves, and some even deliberately turned their backs on him. Elon felt like he was in a strange situation, but he didn't want to think about it right now. His main focus was to get treated and leave as soon as possible. When Emma returned to the nurse station, she noticed that a few of her colleagues were giving her angry looks. One of them, a blonde nurse named Karen, approached her with her arms crossed over her chest. "Seriously, Emma?" she hissed. "Why did you help that guy?" Emma looked at her surprised. "Why shouldn't I? He's a patient and I'm a nurse." Karen shook her head and laughed. "You're so naive. Don't you know? That guy is the biggest enemy of the healthcare system. AI doctors, robotic nurses. He's trying to make all healthcare workers unemployed. And you're helping him?" Emma took a deep breath. "Karen, I'm not here to make politics. I'm just doing my job. A nurse's duty is to help anyone who needs it. It doesn't matter who they are." Karen let out a mocking laugh. "That's why you'll always get stuck here. You're too much of an idealist. But let's see how far this kindness takes you." Emma tried to suppress her nerves and get back to her work, but she couldn't shake the unease inside her. She could feel that everyone in the hospital was treating her strangely. Normally, friendly doctors were now distant. Something was clearly off. About an hour later, the assistant to the hospital director, Dr. Richard Hayes, approached her. With a serious expression, he said, "Emma, our director wants to speak with you. Please come to his office." Emma's heart tightened. She took a deep breath and nodded. "Of course," she said calmly, but inside she felt a great unease. When she entered the director's office, Dr. Hayes was sitting behind his desk. The room was large and luxurious, with awards and diplomas hanging on the walls. However, Emma's attention was caught by the stern expression on the director's face. "Emma," Dr. Hayes said in a cold tone, "we need to talk about something serious." Emma silently nodded. "I was told you wanted to speak with me." Dr. Hayes closed one of his files and fixed his gaze on her. "We know what you did. We heard you helped Elon Musk." Emma raised her eyebrows. "Yes, that's correct. He broke his arm. I provided medical assistance." Dr. Hayes took a deep breath. "Emma, our hospital has specific protocols, and someone like Elon Musk is a figure who doesn't align with our values. We don't want him here. Instead of helping him, you should have referred him to other doctors." Emma stared at him in disbelief. "I wasn't supposed to help him? This is a hospital, Dr. Hayes. Isn't it against our ethical values to not help someone in need?" Dr. Hayes' face hardened. "Ethical values are not an excuse, Emma. The real world doesn't work like that. We are an institution that provides healthcare, yes, but we are also a company, and we need to protect the interests of this company. Elon Musk is our enemy. By helping him, you've jeopardized the hospital's reputation." Emma's insides boiled with anger, but she tried to keep calm. "If the hospital's reputation says I shouldn't help someone in need, then this hospital isn't what I thought it was." Dr. Hayes narrowed his eyes. "I was expecting to hear that. Emma, you're a very talented nurse, but insubordination is unacceptable. By ignoring management's decisions, you've harmed the policies of our hospital. That's why I'm firing you." Emma's heart sank instantly. She looked at him in shock. "You're firing me? Just because I helped a patient?" Dr. Hayes shook his head. "Yes. Pack your things and leave immediately. You have no place here anymore." For a moment, Emma didn't know what to say. She was filled with anger, but also a sense of helplessness from being wronged. The career she had devoted years to had been dismissed because of someone's identity. She stood up, holding her head high. "I understand," she said in a firm voice, "but know this, Dr. Hayes, you're not ending my career. You're just making me leave this hospital, but this is not the end." Dr. Hayes nodded indifferently. "We'll see about that. You may leave now." As Emma opened the door and walked out, her eyes were filled with tears, But she didn't cry. As she walked down the corridor, nurses and doctors were looking at her. Some were sad, others mocking. Karen approached her with gleaming eyes. "I knew it," she whispered. "Being this kind-hearted was going to get you into trouble." Emma shot her a sharp look. "Being kind is never a mistake, Karen, but I'm not expecting you to understand that." She packed her things from her locker and headed for the hospital's exit. Her eyes were still not tearful. As she walked out the door, she silently made a promise to herself. "I won't stay silent in the face of this injustice. One day, they'll come asking for my help at this hospital, and when that day comes, I won't forgive anyone." But the next day, Emma would experience the biggest shock of her life. After leaving the hospital, Elon Musk returned to his office. The pain in his arm was still there, but that wasn't the only thing on his mind. He had noticed how distant and hostile people had been toward him at the hospital. But what bothered him most was that the only person who had helped him was Emma. The other doctors and nurses had practically ignored him, even turned their backs on him. When he arrived at his office in the morning, his assistant, Jack, placed a few documents on his desk, looking at him with a hesitant expression. "Are you okay, Mr. Musk?" he asked. Elon lifted his head and gave a slight smile. "I'm fine, Jack. Just some pain, but it's nothing." Jack nodded, but there was something hidden in his eyes. After a brief pause, he gathered his courage and spoke. "Mr. Musk, I need to tell you something." Elon raised his eyebrows. "Go ahead, Jack. I'm listening." Jack took a deep breath. "The nurse who helped you yesterday, Emma, they fired her." Elon paused for a moment. "What?" he said quietly. Jack, carefully watching Elon's reaction, continued. "Yes, the hospital management fired her for helping you. It's said to be Dr. Hayes' personal decision. Apparently, many people at the hospital didn't like you, and Emma helping you upset them." Elon's eyes narrowed. His anger began to rise slowly. "Because she helped me," he repeated. "Is a person supposed to be punished just for doing their job?" Jack shook his head. "Yes, sir. What's worse, they sent her off in a terrible manner. The whole hospital's talking about her. Some people see her as a traitor, while others say she's just a victim." Elon remained silent for a while. Then his eyes gleamed with determination. "This is unacceptable." Jack knew that tone. When Elon set his mind on something, he wouldn't stop until it was solved. Elon took a deep breath. "Jack, gather information on the hospital management. I want to know everything about Dr. Hayes and the other officials." Jack nodded quickly. "I'll get on it right away." Elon leaned back in his chair, forgetting the pain in his arm as he started to think. He had to do something about this injustice. Emma had helped him without even knowing him. Now, it was his turn to help her. A few hours later, Jack placed some documents in front of Elon. "Here's what I found about the hospital management. Dr. Hayes is one of the major shareholders of the hospital. He also has connections with several healthcare companies." Elon quickly scanned the documents. "Is there anything illegal?" Jack sifted through the files. "I didn't find direct evidence, but some financial transactions look suspicious. Some funds are missing, and it's unclear where they went." Elon shook his head. "This isn't enough. We need more information. Get me our best research team." Within hours, Elon's team of detectives got to work. Former journalists, legal advisors, and private investigators started digging into Dr. Hayes and the hospital management. Elon wanted to handle everything legally, but if someone had a dirty secret, he was determined to bring it to light. As days passed, the investigation started to yield results. The hospital executives were connected to illegal drug trafficking. They were overbilling insurance companies for expensive treatments. There was even strong evidence that they had embezzled some of the hospital's donation funds. When Jack presented the findings to Elon, a slight smile appeared on his face. "Now, we've got something." Elon called his lawyers and instructed them to begin the legal process. The hospital management found itself at the center of a massive scandal when the information was leaked to the press. Headlines exploded. "Famous hospital shaken by massive corruption scandal. Dr. Hayes and management face bribery and illegal billing charges." The media swarmed the hospital's doorstep. Protesters began gathering outside. The hospital's stock dropped rapidly, and investors pulled back. Dr. Hayes and the other executives went into a panic. But the worst part was that government officials had taken control of the situation. The evidence collected by Elon's research team was handed over to federal authorities. Dr. Hayes and some of the management members were investigated and soon arrested. Since losing her job, Emma had been going through a difficult time. She was applying for new jobs, but being fired from a major hospital made it harder for her to find work. Most hospitals had heard the gossip about her and didn't want to hire her. One morning, she woke up to a notification on her phone. She couldn't believe her eyes when she saw the news headlines. The hospital management was under investigation for corruption. Dr. Hayes and some officials had been arrested. In shock, she scrolled down to read another headline. Elon Musk exposes the corruption. Her heart started racing. Had Elon done something for her? Had he taken action after learning she was fired? Just then, her phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but instinctively she picked up. "Emma?" said a familiar voice. Emma's breath caught in her throat. "Mr. Musk?" Elon spoke with a smile in his voice. "I suppose I can't stay silent when someone is wronged. Dr. Hayes and his team are no longer in charge. When I heard about what happened to you, I knew I had to do something." Emma was momentarily speechless. You really did this?" Elon chuckled softly. "Who else would?" Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. I'll never forget this," Elon said in a serious tone. "But it's not over yet. I have an offer for you." Emma was about to experience the biggest shock of her life. After accepting Elon's offer, Emma's life changed completely. Musk MedTech was being established as one of the world's most innovative healthcare centers, and Emma was set to become one of its most important doctors. But the greatest opportunity Elon gave her was the full scholarship for her to become a doctor. Emma began her years of training, classes, exams, intense hospital internships, long overnight shifts. After all of this, she graduated as a specialist doctor. And now she was starting her position as an internist and emergency medicine specialist at Musk MedTech. However, this was not an ordinary hospital. The patients arriving were people who couldn't be treated anywhere else. Treatments made use of artificial intelligence, robotic surgeries, and genetic therapies. By working here, Emma not only became a doctor, but also a scientist and an expert in health technologies. In her first year as a doctor, Emma was dealing with quite complex cases, but one of the most challenging ones involved a young child with a rare genetic disease. This child had been attacking their own organs since birth. Their immune system had gone out of control, and hospitals were only trying to manage the symptoms. But this was a temporary solution, and the child's condition was getting worse. Emma and her team, using AI-assisted DNA analysis, identified the root cause of the disease. The issue was a gene that regulated the child's immune system. There was no treatment using classical medicine methods. However, at Musk MedTech, genetic engineering and CRISPR technology were being utilized. After weeks of analysis and planning, Emma and her team of genetic engineers developed a personalized gene therapy to correct the child's DNA. The treatment was administered, and within weeks, the child's immune system began to return to normal. A few months later, the child was completely healthy. After this case, Emma's name became known as one of the pioneers of modern medicine. But for her, this was just the beginning. One day, Elon called Emma to a private meeting. "I want to talk to you about a new project," he said. "We're planning to send humans to Mars, but to be able to live there for a long period, we need to improve our healthcare system." Emma was shocked. "A healthcare system on Mars?" Elon nodded. "Yes, if humans are going to live on Mars, we can't wait for someone who gets sick or injured to be sent back to Earth. We need to design advanced diagnostic systems, robotic surgeons capable of performing remote surgeries, and AI-supported medical intervention systems. And I want you to be in charge of this project." For Emma, this was the greatest opportunity of her life. It was also a huge responsibility. Space medicine required a completely different level of knowledge and technology. But Emma had never been one to shy away from challenges. "I'm ready," she said with a smile. For this new project, Emma first needed to specialize in space medicine. For months, she worked with NASA and SpaceX, studying how the human body changes in zero-gravity environments. She also collaborated with engineers developing remote robotic surgery systems. Because even if a doctor wasn't on Mars, a surgeon on Earth should be able to operate on a patient on Mars. Emma also worked on psychological health, as long-duration space travel posed significant physical and mental challenges for astronauts. After a year of intensive research and testing, the first Mars Health module was ready. This module had a medical support system that worked with artificial intelligence. If an astronaut got sick or injured, it could automatically diagnose the condition and allow remote doctors to intervene. And the person leading the development of this module was Dr. Emma Williams. A few years later, Musk MedTech had become not only a center for human health on Earth, but also in space. Emma had revolutionized the medical world. Robotic surgeries, genetic treatments, personalized medicines, all of these had made significant progress thanks to her and her team's work. Once just an ordinary nurse, Emma was now a doctor, shaping the future of humanity. And all of this had started just a few years ago, from the day she was unjustly fired from her job. Sometimes life offers the greatest opportunities during the worst moments, and Emma had made the most of this opportunity. Yes, folks, this is where our story ends. If you like the story, don't forget to like the video. You can also subscribe to my channel for more story videos like this.